You matter. Yes, you do. You matter. At the counseling center, we've been using that statement quite a bit because it's come to mean a great deal and because it always has meant a great deal. My name is Frank Crane, and I'm a counselor at the Embry-Riddle Counseling Center. And I'd like to explore with you just what we mean when we use the statement, you matter, and also to look more deeply into the whole question. What does it mean to matter? How do we matter? But before I go too far into that, I'm going to say that there are two aspects of mattering, if you will. One is the what are the things that matter? And then the other is the where do we see these things in play? And then even more fundamentally is what I would call the short rule of mattering. And that is, you matter to the extent that you love. You matter to the extent that you love. Okay? So some very great people have worked on this question, and I'm going to start with a list developed several years ago by therapist Stephen Hayes. And this list was called 10 Signs You Know What Matters. So the first item on Hayes's list is you feel a sense of enough rather than a need to measure whether you have more or less than others. So if you feel a sense of enough, that means that what you have is sufficient for you, and that you become self-sufficient. And if you are self-sufficient, you have security, and if you have security, you have integrity. So when we talk about enough, we say, well, the things that are important in life, I've figured out what they are for me. I've got a sense of what works for me, and I'm going forward with it. And I'm not going to be fazed that much by what other people are doing. So, another point in Hayes' list, you can readily name your heroes. So if someone is doing something really excellent in the area of some value that you love, naturally they will be a hero. You want to do what they do so that you can share in the exercise of that value. So people who do really well the things that you love almost automatically become your heroes. Okay, number 3. You can single out the sweetest moments of your life. What makes a moment of life sweet? Well, when you see this thing that you love going on around you, maybe going on inside you as well, you are there. For that moment, you have realized what is most important, most valuable, most beautiful for you. We dare say that you're happy. And so when you identify those moments, you say, of course, these are value moments for me. These are the times when I found that precious thing actually going on within and around me. Okay. Now, there's good and there's bad. You can identify the sweetest moments in your life, but according to Hayes, you can also identify your greatest pain. Because sometimes we can make this all-out effort to achieve something that we believe is truly good and to share it, and the effort fails. Or the thing that we struggled for is lost. And there's really no two ways about this. We've got to accept that it happened. We've got to look it in the face. We've got to ask ourselves what needs to be done about it. And if we love our values, we have to keep going. Because we will have learned valuable things from the setback. Okay, continuing with Hayes. You don't know the content, but you can identify the theme of the next chapter of your life narrative. You don't know exactly what you're going to be doing or who you're going to be doing it with or where you'll be, but you'll know that it'll be something that affirms what you consider important. Working with people whom you consider to be worth working with. People who believe what you believe and share what you share and uphold the kinds of principles that you uphold. Okay, so your life will be principle driven rather than money driven or opportunity driven. Okay, so what else? Number 6, the what's important, the worth doing, the mattering thing is what you would do even if no one were looking. And why would you do that? Well, because you think it's important, for one thing. But more importantly, is that inside your very organism, it feels really good. And it doesn't feel good all the time, and it feels good maybe in different ways than a chocolate ice cream cone feels good. But it is something that gives you joy. Working toward what is good leads to joy. It's one of those truisms, but it's true. Okay. It's also what you would do if nobody was looking. Because again, it's you and your values, you and your joy, you and the contribution that you find yourself making, and therefore you would do it anyway, and it adds to your vitality as a human being. What else? Makes you feel like getting up in the morning. The things that you're doing here make you feel that it's worthwhile to get out of bed. And again, we're seeing in several points in this Hayes list that values add to vitality. Values add to vitality. Okay. Another thing about the knowing what matters is that you're able to write about it. You can sit down and in a few minutes write down what matters to you and why it should matter to other people. And this is a very good exercise because in doing so, you become more articulate. You focus on the right words in the right order. You become more persuasive. You might even win people over to your side, depending on how eloquently and accurately you express yourself. So it's a really good exercise to be able to write about your values. Then we get to, you have a strong need to communicate about your values. Again, you're brimming over with this joy and purpose, and you really, at least from time to time, you feel like communicating with others about it. And that's a beautiful thing because it adds to human communication and dialogue. Excellent stuff. Okay. And then finally, a very interesting point which Hayes makes, that when you're doing and living by what matters, you use your mind as a tool to humanize rather than objectify yourself. Humanize rather than objectify. Think about that for a moment. If you're dealing with the good things, if you're trying to approach them more closely, you're trying to be more human. And, people talk about being human, being humane, practicing humanity. Well, you're maybe more approachable, you're maybe kinder, you're maybe more aware of the needs of other people, you're maybe probably more helpful, and so on and so on and so forth. And you are humanizing yourself every time you take action in the direction of your values, as opposed to objectifying yourself. What if you're in an all-night poker game and huge amounts of money are crossing the table? Well, do I have a better hand than that guy over there? What about him? Is he cheating? What about this? Well, I can get ahead on this. So you're in competition with all the other players. And you're trying to get you into a better position by piling up more money at the end of the game. Does this sound a bit like life? Well, for many people, this is life. And that's all that there is to life. But those people are not people focused on values. They're people focused on making themselves better players in this nasty little game of competition and challenge and make it all and get away with it kind of thing. So that is not a life of values. That is a life of objectifying yourself. Okay, so we're looking at all of these different things about the what of values and the what of what matters inside those values. Now, the where do we see those values in action? Where do we see this taking place? Well, the great psychologist Martin Seligman has a list that he calls PERMA, actually PERMA plus. And it reminds me of that word permafrost. You know, in the Arctic, when we had an Arctic, there was always an area under the ground that was permanently frozen. So it's like saying that inside of us, there are things that are just permanent and enduring, and that's the way it is. And these are the areas that Seligman has identified. And they go as follows. First, positive emotion for P. So when we have positive emotions, we posit things. We put them out there in front of us. We put them out as an offering, as a contribution to others. If we have negative emotions, we take things away or we destroy what's there. That's what it means to negate. Posit, you put something. Negative, you break something or take it away. So we have positive emotions because we're trying to make things better. In other words, more in accord with our values. Okay, next, engagement. And Hayes hints at this in a couple of places, but Seligman is saying you are committed to doing the value, to living the value, to showing up for the value. And in the process of doing that, you find your people, in other words, the people that want to work with you on this. You find your, as the French say, your métier, the environment in which you want to do it in. And you are engaged, which means you are committed to the long haul because of these values. They're not just transient little things. They're permanent. And as you work in that way, you become stronger and better. Okay. Next, we have the R, which is relationships. As you develop the values, as you work on these things in the area of relationships, it begins to show. Certain people are living in accord with your values and you can't help but like them. Other people, well, it's kind of hard to like them because they don't seem to have any good values, or they don't seem to have the values that you have. So maybe it's a bit difficult. Maybe you have to be diplomatic. But we have commitments that begin when we have relationships. We have partners, we have children, we have communities, we have homes where we share our ideas with one another and give one another food and help and so on. And all of these areas of relationship are part of the place in which values get activated and exercised. Okay, then we have M, which stands for meaning. And if you ever saw that wonderful old Russian novel, Anna Karenina, it's a huge, huge, huge book full of all kinds of fascinating and very often tragic events. But the main character, or one of the main characters, at the very end, on the very last page, he says, "My life has meaning." In other words, he lives all the way through a tumultuous Russian novel, and he's still able to say, "My life has meaning." And so with us, we say, yep, it was bad at times. It was really bad at other times, but it was good too. And it was this and that and the other thing. But it has meaning for me. It has meaning because I was living those values. Okay. So the final one, and in a certain way, the smallest of the PERMA, is what we call accomplishments and achievements. So as you live and work in the service of values, you get better at things. You get better at doing certain things. You get more skillful. You're able to make a larger contribution because of your engagement and commitment and so forth. And so you're able to do things throughout your career as a values person that make you a more valuable player, if you will. So these are the aspects of PERMA. We have the what, the things we love, and of course, that also includes the people we love. Values are values, and then the people we love are our loved ones. So we try to promote and strengthen all those ties. And then we activate our values in the area of PERMA, the positive emotion, engagement, positive relationships, meaning, accomplishments, and achievements. Seligman also has a thing called PERMA Plus, which is optimism, physical activity, nutrition, and sleep. In other words, these are qualities that will help you stay in the game, keep you well fed and mentally and physically healthy. So we're looking now at this synthesis where by finding what matters, by doing what matters to you in the important settings, in the important places where they matter, you begin to matter because you become a person of value because you live by values in the places where those values are so important. Okay, I'm sure that we'll be talking more about this. For now, this is Frank Crane saying thank you for your attention and live up to your values. I hope you do well. Take good care.